Hello everyone, this is Jotto, and welcome to part 6 of the Trials Comprehensive Guide. Now, we are on to the evil aspect, starting with Rage, just going off the little pattern of 6 that I seem to be following. But anyway, yeah, I've had a busy week, that's why I haven't been streaming or making videos for 4 days or something, but I have time now. So that's good, and we got the Pioneers Invitational tomorrow. So big couple of days for Spellweaver. But on to the topic at hand. So Rage is an interesting aspect because its competitive edge is designed to have burn as a concept. Now you'll see why this is a weird sort of paradox in the case of Trials, because its main strength comes from its burn effects, but that doesn't really work in a drafting format. But anyway, so as far as heroes goes, Rage has a hilarious consistency in the fact that it has one very good one medium powered, and one useless hero. Whereas all the other aspects that I can think of at least, yeah, pretty much all the other aspects have like a lopsided either very very good set of heroes or a bad set of heroes, where in the case of Rage it's kind of just one for each. So basic Zash is pretty useless, the ability is just too situational. Advanced Zash is crazy strong because it will just wipe the board over and over and over again, and it's actually just like having Cataclysm in your deck all the time. It's crazy. And Burke, depending on your color combo, can be very good. He allows you to maintain board control, and you either need to be hyper aggressive or play some sort of mid-range deck, usually with Wisdom. That's the one that works with best. But it can work with any color combo really. But yeah, dropping 2 sets of 2 damage on the board is actually quite useful. Now, as far as commons goes, if we just get rid of all the rest of the stuff here, we actually have an interesting thing where we have common artifacts. Well, just the single common artifact in the totem, which is very unusual. Are there any other common artifacts? Oh yeah, I didn't consider the artifact creatures actually. Now I think about it. Okay, that makes sense. But anyway, so first things first, let's just get the unplayable stuff out of the way here. Rage has an issue. It's called Shamans. Shamans are not very good in Trials, period, and it also means that because you can't always draft the totems and the Shamans, chances are if it says Shaman on it, it's usually a very bad pick. So, Totem of Swiftness, unpickable. It's not even remotely pickable. Offering Yard Priest, unpickable because you won't get enough totems. Let's see, Raki Tribe Mystic, you can pick it, it's just a bad sort of elf from Dominion. It's actually the same as the old version, just 3 mana, 2 speed, 2/3. It's not very good. I wouldn't be too torn up about picking it, but it's not fantastic. And then you got the other common Shaman here, and Shaman Fire Dancer, which also isn't very good, because this stat distribution is quite bad. If this was 2/3, it'd be a good pick. But turns out 3/2 is considerably worse than 2/3, just because it trades down a lot, not up, which is not what you're looking for. So, straight away, bunch of cards you probably don't want to be looking at. Then we've got Boiling Blood, which again you don't want to be picking, because it's just a 2-for-1 setup, and +2 attack. For 2 mana is not a good rate. Then you have Detonate, 2 situational, so you can't pick it. So we're off to an absolute roll as far as just some of the commons goes. Now, the last commons I've left here, there's a set of 5 commons which are varying between good and okay. Goblin Warrior is a very, very good card. It does die to Bloodseeking Mutant, but that's about its only problem. It is a very powerful 1-drop and will allow you to trade up with 2-drops a lot and get a lot of damage in. So Goblin Warrior is a very, very good card. Then we've got the second of the pickable goblins in Fireworker. As it turns out, a 2/2 for 2 is all you need in red. It's not, I mean, when we went over order, I was saying that it's not really something you're looking at really as a 2 mana 2/2 with 2 speed. But in red, it's a bit different. Why? Because you have removal, which means you just want that early game creature so you can actually get your creatures down and then start removing his blockers and just start hitting him in the face. So the Fireworker turns out to be quite good. Also, that ability might as well read Sacrifice to destroy target helm, because that's pretty much the only artifact you'll be seeing a lot of. But it's a useful ability to have, and I do like having 1 or 2 Fireworkers in my Rage decks. Then we've got Gibbo and Ronnie, which is just 2 goblins stapled together. As it turns out, 3 mana for 2 1-drops is actually fine, because when you put 2 cards together, you have to increase the mana cost, otherwise it's too card efficient. And Gibbo and Ronnie is pretty good. It's basically a 3 mana 4/2 with 2 speed over 2 bodies, which is better and worse depending on the situation, usually slightly worse. In the case of a 4/2 with 2 speed instead of 2 2/1s. However, let's just say it's less vulnerable to single target removal, more vulnerable to AoE, and it's also vulnerable to things like library guards, which is where removal comes in. However, it is a lot of attack to put onto the board, and multiple Gibbo and Ronnies are very, very good. They're not sharpshooter levels of good, but they're still very, very good, and drafts with 4 Gibbo and Ronnies in them will probably do fairly well. Now, the last of the common creatures is the Orc Javelineers, a card which I had zero respect for a very long time, and over time it's proven its worth. As it turns out, a 3/4 with ranged is really hard to block, as in it will probably barrel through anything you can put in front of it in most cases, and if he finally has a 4/4, you can just make it unable to block if you're playing basic Zash, or maybe have a Dragonfire for it, or tie it up or something. So Orc Javelineers is surprisingly useful in that fashion. It also deals with Tombs of the Damned like no other, which I always find kind of amusing when that happens, and is one of the strongest turn 2 plays for Kayanu in red-green, and that's probably the end of the game if you get your 4 or 5 down, because it'll just keep attacking. So yeah, red-green can get some very, very aggressive openers, mostly off the backs of some of these aggressive creatures from Rage. Now, the last common would be the Fireball. Fireball is almost necessary for success because it deals with a lot of stuff. Bloodseeking Mutant, Harpy, Library Guards, Necromantic Cult, Succubus. Like, there's a long list of cards this kills, and often it kills things that red can't really deal with in any other way, because a lot of their creatures are very low quality, because the aspect is balanced around you having access to burn spells to finish off your opponent, which means the creature quality in general is drastically weaker than something like nature, as we'll see as we go through the aspect a bit more. Now, normally I would split these up into creatures and spells, but in the case of Rage, it's not really the case. In the case of Rage, it's kind of splitting the playables from the unplayables, and when it comes down to Rage, it's at common slot. You're talking about probably 3 commons you're happy to see in Warrior, Ronnie, and Fireball, and then you've got Fireworker and Javelineers. You're not too torn up about picking, they're okay. And then you've got Raki Tribe Mystic, which is kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel there, but it's fine. The problem is that the rest of them are basically unpickable to an extraordinary level. You really can't pick up any of these 5, so it does reduce your options a considerable amount. Now, if we switch over to the uncommons, the uncommon creature slot is not very good for Rage. This is something which is a problem. It's the same issue that Order have, actually, which is their consistency when it comes to their creature base. Now, let's just get these out of the way straight up. Ancestor's Guide is unpickable. It's a shaman, and it has bad stats, and it's just completely unpickable. The ability is okay, but the stats are too bad. Gigantodon is not unplayable, but you need an insanely robust curve to get it to work. Like, you need 1-drops, 2-drops, Gibbo and Ronnies, and then Gigantodon, because if you play it any later than turn 4, it's a bad card. If you play it on turn 4, it's surprisingly devastating in a lot of situations. However, that won't happen much with your curve, and this is the problem with Zombie Giant as well, which we'll get to later. And Thunderstorm Titan is the only one of these sort of 4 mana, 1 level cards you can consistently play on curve, but that's because Dominion is a lot easier to build a rigid curve with, because they can curve their removal with it. Now, Order has a similar issue with their Griffin Rider, but Griffin Rider is more powerful later on in the game, whereas Gigantodon's 1 speed makes it a liability in the late game. So I would not recommend picking it up too much. Then we've got Firebrand Goblin. Again, I really don't like this card that much. It's not unpickable, but it's not exactly good. A 2-2, a 2-speed Swift at that cost is not very good when you're comparing it to its competitors, Library Guards, Elf Commander, things like that. These are way stronger. And Firebrand Golem just doesn't live up to that. It can work with things like Gibber and Ronnie, but then you're relying on tribal synergies in your drafting, and that's not exactly what you want to be doing. So Firebrand Goblin is again on the lower side of things. Now, there are 2 uncommons which are reasonably good. Lizard, I'll get out of the way with now. I actually don't think Lizard is as good in Trials as a lot of people seem to think, mostly because it has an atrociously bad matchup against Nature and Dominion. Because Nature and Dominion have access to Assassin and Elf Warrior as 2-drops, and both of them kill Lizard Barbarian for free. So it's just not very good in that regard. It makes Goblin Warrior many times better than Lizard Barbarian in Trials. So Lizard Barbarian is not something I'm very happy to pick. I mean, I will pick it if I need to start red. If I'm base red and I really need that curve, I'll pick my Lizard Barbarians. But if I'm not base red, I don't like picking the Lizard personally. It's not bad, but it's not a very good 1-drop. It's an okay 1-drop, but it's not a very good 1-drop. Lastly, we have Disciple of Zash. Now, this is a actually good uncommon. The ping effect is a lot more impacting than you'd think, particularly considering you have access to Advanced Zash and Burke, which lets you deal 3 damage to something with Burke and 2 to another, or if you have 6 mana, you can go ping, hero power. And then you kill the 1 4 HP guy, which is probably causing you a lot of issues. Yes, you lose your Disciple, but it's worth it in this case. Getting multiples of these gets a bit disgusting. It is a tempo loss and does die to Mutant, but that's about its only fault. That and Advanced Darius, that's also a problem. But the card itself is reasonably okay to pick up in a lot of situations, and is particularly good with blue, because if you have Advanced Darius, then you get to ping things for 2, and if you have Flash Freeze, then you get to kill stuff for 2 mana. So it is particularly good with blue. Now onto the uncommon spells. So then we got Massive Assault, which is not unpickable, but I would stay away from this personally, it's too situational. And Ruination, which is one of the worst cards in the game, so we're just going to avoid that. Then you got Dragonfire. Dragonfire is crazy strong. In fact, it's so strong, it's an almost see it, you pick it card. The reason is because that's a quarter of their life total right there. It also deals with creatures that you can't really deal with in any other way, like 4/4s, which is a serious problem when it comes to Rage. Now, Dragonfire is also kind of necessary for successful Rage drafts in a lot of situations. The reason for it is because, as I mentioned earlier, the aspect itself is balanced around burn, which means if you don't get that burn and it's uncommon, then you're kind of scuppered. It's not something that you're going to have fun with if you can't kill them from about 7, I would say, through burn. Maybe 8. I mean, a Dragonfire and a Fireball every game, you only have to deal 12 damage through creatures. Yeah, that can work. It is a bit sketchy, but I think that's pretty much where you're going to be getting a lot of your wins from, is just from drafting 2 Dragonfires. I think that's what you need. 3 is really good, but you really do need 2. 1 is a bit sketchy, and not getting any can cause some serious disasters when it comes to drafting. It's a very, very important card to get. Now, let's see, the artifacts. This is just more totems. I mean, Lightning Totem is debatably pickable if you have a whole bunch of Disciple of Zashes, but I don't like picking totems in general, so. When it comes down to uncommons, and also the skill shrine is totem based. So yeah, when it comes down to uncommons, you've really got 3 maybe 4 pickable uncommons. Yeah, Rage has some serious consistency issues when it comes to trials. Now, onto the rares. Now, Rage's rares vary from being extremely good to not fantastic. Kind of similar to Wisdom, actually, and how that worked, where some of their rares are just crazy good, but some of them are just unpickable. It's not quite as extreme, though. Altar of Dragons is a pickable skill shrine. Getting a Fireball for 2 mana, and yes, you discard a random, but it's a useful effect. I mean, Fireballs are a commodity which you can't really give up, and it's a nice skill shrine. Besides that, we've got some which are not... I mean, the rares that are not fantastic, but they're still not unpickable, are Flame Serpent and Looter. Now, Looters, because it's double red, and that's a bit sketchy, but it's not unpickable. You can pick it up, but it's not unpickable. It's just the double red makes it a bit sketchy to play, and often it's just better to pick something else. Flame Serpent is usually just a bad Dragonfire. The main reason for it is because it gets bounced and removed mid-combat by Flash Freeze and Vermin if it's on board, and it gets bounced by Tornado Outbreak, and it has some issues. That and only being 2 speed means it can't deal with a lot of higher speed threats, which is what you want to be doing, because Flame Serpent's strength comes from being able to remove a creature and then also deal excess damage to your opponent. But in trials, that's often very difficult, so Dragonfire is many times better than Flame Serpent in trials. Now, the last of the sort of okay rares is Fia. Fia is a powerhouse in Constructed, but when it comes to trials, is not quite as well suited. The main reason for it is because 1 HP stuff in general is weaker because of Advanced Darius and also Dominion in general, because they have their weakness counter ping effects from Mutant and the Cathedral of the Night. So Fia doesn't have as many easy targets as you would expect, and it can't really get much work done. It's not unpickable, it's a decent 2-drop, but it can't get that much work done, and so often you'll just skip picking it. The rest of the rares vary from being very good to game-winningly good. So we've got Word of Fire will usually hit for 2, so you get 2 mana, 2 damage, draw a card. That's crazy good advantage, and sometimes you go 3 rage levels, but that's very uncommon. But just 2 mana, 2 damage, draw a card. Sign me up. That is a good exchange rate as far as I'm concerned there. And then you've got Ramgath, which for 5 mana and 3 levels, you can get your 5 swifted damage in. And unlike Flame Serpent, it has 3 speed, so you can actually attack something with 3 speed and summon the token that will be attacking it anyway, so you get your 5 damage into a 3 speed creature. It is more expensive, but it's still very powerful, and you can just play it on 3 mana, 3 levels. It's not particularly good there, but you can just play it, attack, and if it lives, you start making tokens. So Ramgath can be quite impacting. On to the Incarnate. The Incarnate for Rage is an all-star in Trials because everyone goes up to 3 or 4 levels. Meaning that the Incarnate can cause some serious mayhem in the late game. What you're basically dealing with is a 2 mana 3/3 or 4/4 that can pump itself up with excess mana that you're going to have around just by default because you don't have a lot of card draw in your faction and you're going to have a lot of mana in these drawn out games, and it lets you get massive damage in later. All you need is one swing with an Incarnate past turn 6 or 7 and you're probably going to win because that's 8 damage coming in sometimes. It's a lot of work from a 2-drop, and the Incarnate is a very high pick when you see it. Not quite as high as these two though. Arguably the best creature and spell in Trials. Fire Blast. Fire Blast feels downright unfair sometimes in Trials because it lets you, well, first of all, completely clear any 1 HP stuff at all, along with killing a main creature, but you can also use it with your other creatures to clear entire board states, and really late in the game, it lets you kill everything you can imagine with Advanced Zash or Burk. is massively, massively powerful, and multiple Fire Blasts in a deck will usually result in 8 or 9 wins on their own. It is that strong. It's basically a mini Cataclysm when it comes down to it, and it's one-sided. So it is an incredibly strong spell. It's actually stronger than Cataclysm in my opinion, because it is incredibly good when you're winning as well, not just when you're behind. On to the Phoenix, the almighty Phoenix. Phoenix is a absolute pain in the neck for about 2/3 of the factions. I mean, nature can bounce it, which sucks, and I guess order can pacify it. I mean, bouncing it is only a temporary fix at best. Pacify is what really deals with this, and also Helm. Besides that, not much can deal with the Phoenix. Sleep eventually wears off. Rage have to throw 2 fireballs at it. Corruption, don't even try. Corruption will take 2 consumes with 3 levels. That's not what you want to be doing in Trials anyway, is going for that 3 corruption levels. Or multiple fumes. Lots of fumes. This is not a card you want to see against you as corruption. As it turns out, the 3/3 3-speed flying, I've mentioned this body a few times in my last videos, is just very solid. Even Spectral Aurite, which is basically the same cost as this, well, you need 1 extra level instead of a mana, so you're basically down a card, but you'll probably go up to that 3rd level anyway. You get 2 Spectral Aurites stapled together. That is crazy good. It also means if you have a random Force Wielder, you can sometimes pump this back up to 3 energy, which feels absolutely disgusting if you've ever done it. It's absolutely crazy. Often you can trade your Phoenix, then pump its energy back up. It's very rare when it happens, but when it does, usually it results in your opponent conceding. Much like Fire Blast, multiple Phoenixes is usually a large amount of wins, although unlike Fire Blast, I think 2 Phoenixes in a deck, unless the rest of the deck is absolutely atrocious, is probably a guaranteed 10-win deck. They are that strong. Phoenixes will usually kill about 3 or 4 cards on their own each. They are that strong in Trials because you do not have a lot of the methods to deal with it that you would do in Constructed. Primarily a deck that can guaranteed have 4 bounce effects if they want to, or can steal it with Helm or something like that, but when it comes down to Trials you don't have those options as much, so it's an incredibly strong creature. On to the epics. Now, the epics for Rage are perfect examples of what you want in an epic and what you don't want in an epic. Burning Rage is what you don't want. Why? Because you don't have enough spells to make the effect work, and I mean, the drawback doesn't kill you as fast as it used to, so it's not unpickable, but it's not what you want to be looking at. I mean, I'm trying to think of epics you would pick this over. I guess, I mean, I pick it over Grand Reunion if I'm in red, I think. Simply because they don't have many spirits they can use at all. I don't even think... I mean, there's the Incarnate, but that's about it. So, pick it over Grand Reunion and pick it over Dark Portal. That's about it. The thing is that there aren't enough bad epics in, like, a 2-color combo. Because when you're choosing epics in Trials, you basically got 4 epics to choose from your aspects. You got 4 epics as the choice, so one of them won't show up. And I don't think there's a single color combo where Burning Rage is the pick. No, I don't think there is one. Mostly because, well, I mean, Elder Red Dragon is crazy, crazy good, and this is the epic you want to be seeing. But yeah, Burning Rage isn't too bad, it's just not where you want to be at. But the Red Dragon is exactly where you want to be. It's got the 4 mana, 4 aspect cost, 5/5, 3-speed flying. This is a massive creature. And that ability will actually end the game on its own. In fact, Red Dragon will signify the end of the game in probably 3 turns. Maybe 2 in some cases, depending on how late it is in the game. But a dragon on the board for 3 turns is usually the end, unless you're so far behind that you have to start shooting his creatures, but not far enough behind that you're just dead anyway. So, yeah, the dragon is crazy, crazy powerful. It's not quite as strong as Phoenix, in my opinion, although you actually can't have them as options against each other. But when it comes down to it, I mean, Phoenix is just less vulnerable to removal, whereas Elder Red Dragon can actually be dealt with like Ray, for instance, and Infernal Tribute. It's still difficult, but it is possible. Whereas in the case of Phoenix, it's very, very hard. Now, notably, Elder Red Dragon actually can't be killed by Karthus anymore. That is a fairly big deal. It's immune to Karthus and Drayla, which is a big deal. It's basically immune to Drayla because you can just shoot the Drayla with the ability and you just don't attack with it and the Drayla can't steal it. So when it comes down to it, that is... yeah, that's quite a big boon, that it's basically immune to the Dominion epics. Now, you can kill it with Cataclysm and Helm, so it's kind of immune to the epics, but still vulnerable to some of the rare removal, but that's just true for creatures in general. But yeah, Red Dragon is one of the strongest epics you can possibly pick. I don't know if it's the strongest. I think Drayla is up there. I think that Antriel is weaker than Red Dragon, but I think Namir and Antriel are up there. I think Drayla, Red Dragon, and I think Karthus is below them. So I think it's just between Drayla and Red Dragon when it comes to actual top epic. It may just be the Red Dragon. I think Drayla will usually win the game, but Red Dragon, if it lives, it will end the game. There's no way of getting around that. So I think the Red Dragon probably takes it as the strongest Trials epic. But anyway, as for the aspect as a whole, I mean, I mentioned that there's this weird push-pull with Rage where it's balanced around the fact that it has these massive burn spells that it can throw at people, and if you don't get them, you're kind of screwed. And that's true. I mean, you have so many unpickable commons and uncommons that you're really relying on your rares to pull the deck through, and that's not what you want. Now, it does mean that red plus either nature, wisdom, usually not Dominion. I don't like picking a Dominion, and the reason for it is because both Dominion and Rage have cards that pull you into both colors in the double side. You got Cataclysm, Helm, Red Dragon, Phoenix, Ramgath, like Dragonfire, all these things on both sides that just pull the color combo apart a bit. I mean, it'll work, but I don't particularly like it. You want to be able to go into double red if you can, because, well, one, Advanced Zash can put you into red straight up, and also a lot of their power actually comes from the double red cards. So, in my opinion, the color that supports it the best is Wisdom, because they have more consistent commons and uncommons, and they also have card draw, which helps, and they just kind of pair together very well. And in the case of Nature, that's also a very good pairing for a different reason, which is instead of supporting it, that just becomes a pairing of, if you stumble for a turn, you're going to die, because you've got bounce spells, burn spells, removal of two different types, plus all these aggressive creatures, and you're probably just going to win the game immediately if your opponent doesn't have a play on turn 2, for instance. So anyway, overall valuation for the aspect, I think it's above order, but not by much. It's a bit too inconsistent. It's above order, but it's definitely far below Nature and Wisdom that we've already gone over, and Dominion, as we'll see in the next video. But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, put it in the comment section below. But as now, it's been Jotto, signing off.